Hey everyone and welcome. So in our previous video, I told you about REST API feature of the new MikroTik RouterOS v7. And also I introduced you to Postman API testing suite. But our objective is to automate our network. Testing through Postman is not going to automate our network. That is just a tool so that we can test the APIs, we can see what parameters to send and what parameters we are going to receive from the router. That's it. But how do we automate our network with that? So the answer for that is Python. So what we are going to do today is we're going to use the same REST APIs and we are going to build a code in Python. Remember our objective in the last video? We want to configure the devices for our customers at the least. We don't want to automate the whole network in one go. We want to build it up slowly and steadily. So to do that, the first thing that we are going to do today is we are going to configure our device through REST APIs using Python. We are going to understand how do we use Python and how do we use REST APIs and how do we configure the device using Python and the REST APIs available on MikroTik RouterOS v7. So let's get into it. So on a computer, let's start by downloading Pycharm. So Pycharm is a IDE for Python and it's a great software for newcomers. You can download the community edition and if you want to buy, you can buy the full edition also, but community edition will do. Once you have downloaded it, just install Pycharm in your systems and then we'll go from there. So once you have installed Pycharm and you started, you'll see a screen something like this. And why are we using Pycharm and not a notepad or some other text editor? Ideally, you can write your Python scripts in a notepad or a text editor also, but Pycharm we are using because it's an integrated development environment. That means that you can debug the code in the software itself, and you also have terminal here, so in case you want to install certain packages of Python, you can install everything can be done from here itself. So this is the best way to go about. I usually use Sublime Text and that's my go-to editing software for Python or any other type of scripts and all, but Pycharm is something that will be helpful to you when you're beginning, and later on you can shift your focus from Pycharm to any other text editor that you feel comfortable with. So here let's make a new project. Let's name our project automation underscore MikroTik and we'll select the virtual environment. We'll be using a Python 3 for this. In case you have more than one Python installed like Python 2.7 or something, then you can select that, but it is recommended that you use the latest Python 3. And in case you do not have Python 3, then you can go to python.org and install the new Python 3. So let's create this, and so great, your new project is ready, and this is the initial thing. And if you want to run this code that has just been given to you, you can do run here, and hi Pycharm is the output that you are getting, is because this is printing hi Pycharm. So I'll not go into the details what this program is doing, so let's delete everything here. We don't need this. We'll write a blank program for ourselves. So if you're new to Python, don't get overwhelmed with it. Python is very easy to learn. I'll be giving you some syntaxes which are not difficult to grasp while we are making the code, and I'll be giving you ways that you can learn Python very easily by going to Google and searching certain stuff. So don't get overwhelmed by it. The easiest way to learn a language is to have something to develop for. If you're learning language, just learning the language, it will be boring and difficult to do so. This is my personal experience. I have learned Python just by making scripts from it over the past 2 years. It takes a bit of time, I agree, but it's never too late to learn or never too late to start. So you can go to Google and you can just search web requests on Python. So if you remember that we were sending web requests, HTTPS requests while using Postman. So that's a web request. So how do we send a web request through Python? And I have already clicked on a link here, which is a blog, and this is a great blog if you're starting out, and it has everything that you need. It tells you how you can write code in Python. It explains you about REST APIs also. So let's look at this code, and we are going to be using the same methods that we discussed in the last video, that is get, put, post, deletes, and we are going to be doing this. So let's just get straight into it. And the first thing that we need to do is we need to install a module which is request. By default this doesn't come, so let's go back to our Pycharm. And in Pycharm, what you can do is come to terminal here and just write the simple command pip3 install request. So currently for me, I've already installed it, so there was no installation done. But if in case you have not installed a request, you'll get an installation progress bar. And if in case you are returned with this error that your pip is out of date, don't worry, there's a command given, so you can run python -m pip install upgrade pip. Once installed, the new pip will be installed. Pip is basically your package manager, which manages the packages for Python. Pythons have lots and lots of modules, lots and lots of packages. You can use tons of them, and pip is something that can help you out in identifying those packages you can install very easily with it. So you can use pip, and the best way to find about a package is just go on Google and search about the package, and you will get to know. So great, now we have installed pip, and if we go back to the blog, we see that it says import request. So what we are doing is now we are importing that module in our program. So the first thing that we want to see is that if we can execute a get request that we did last time around. So to do that, we can use response equal to request. Method is get here, and you see that now there is a suggestion because we are using a function get inside request, which we have just imported, and it says that we need to enter URL, parameters, data, headers, cookies, files. So what we need to do is we need to enter first our URL. So if you remember, our URL is https our router IP. Then what we need to do is we need to send authentication. So how do we send authentication? So if you remember Postman, we were using basic auth, and basic auth package is available inside request package auth. So you need to do is from request.auth import http basic auth. So our complete URL is our IP address of our router, REST interface. Let's just get the list of interfaces that are there right now, and let's use that package of authentication. So we want to use http basic auth, and what we need to do now is there is a suggestion that we need to enter the username and the password. So great, let's enter the username and the password for it. So the username is API, and the password that I'm using is mysecretsauce123. So great, now we have sent our response, and now what we are looking for is we are looking for a reply from our router. So if you remember, the reply from router was in JSON format. So let's just do one thing right now. Let's just print the response function here of JSON. So we remember our response is in JSON format. So let's see what happens. So don't worry if you get errors, something that I'm gonna get, don't worry about it. So let's just see what happens. So we just ran, and what just happened? So there was a bunch of errors that have come. Let's review them one by one, and let's see how we can rectify them. So the first problem is that there is an SSL verification error, and this error, if you remember when we were entering Chrome also, this error was coming. So what is happening is the SSL is getting verified here also by Python, and it is not able to understand what certificate authority has issued this SSL. So to overcome this, what you need to enter in your request get is one more parameter, that is verify is equals to false. We don't want it to verify our SSL. So let's just run once again and see what happens. Awesome. So we have got actually a response back with all our interfaces, but this is not a readable format. To make it more readable, let's do one more thing. So we need to import another module, which is Json. Json is an inbuilt module, so you don't have to worry about installing it through Pycharm. And this time around, when we print, what we need to do is use this module and the method that comes in it, which is dumps. And what we need to print is the object. So if you see, the hint that is given is object, and then what we need to do is we need to indent it also. So we'll use this and then comma, we'll indent it 4. Perfect. So now our output is in a readable format that we can read, and this is something that we can work on. Again, if you do not understand how to do it, just go to Google, just write here JSON response Python beautification. So how to beautify JSON in Python? I mean, there is tons and tons of resources that you will find here. There are many ways that this can be done, and this is just one of the ways that we use. We did a JSON dumps of the data. This is our data. So our data was passing in response.json variable, and we just did an indent is equals to 4. Awesome. So now we can actually use this data, and we can build upon it. So if you want to search, say, how many Ethernet ports are available or how many bridge ports are available, so we can actually search this thing. But first, if you're worried about this error, so it's the same error that this is an unverified HTTPS request. Adding a certificate verification is strongly advised. You can visit this to ignore this. So to ignore this, what you can do is you can enter these two commands, which is import url lib3, and in this what you can do is a url lib3 dot disable warnings. So once you disable the warnings, what is going to happen is anytime you send a request, this warning will not show again. So the warning has gone. So don't worry, don't be like, how do I know this thing? If you were to search, if you were to delete this and run it again, all you need to do is insecure warning unverified HTTPS request. Just copy this thing, go to Google and just search for it, and you will be given tons and tons of answers on it, and you can just copy paste those answers. There are certain things that you do not require in regular need and are available readily on the internet. Somebody else has also asked for it, so you can copy that answer and you don't have to stress over it a lot. Great. So let's now do something more on this. So we have hard coded our URL, our username, and the password. So let's just make a variable now, and from that variable, what we are going to do is we're going to fetch that variable every time we want to hit an API, because every time the endpoint is going to be different. Sometimes we want to fetch interface, sometimes we want to fetch bridge, sometimes we want to fetch IP addresses. So let's make a string. So HTTPS in single colon 103 router IP and rest. So this is our standard endpoint variable that we can use every time, so we don't have to type the whole HTTPS router IP slash rest, because this is going to be common for everywhere. And the username is also going to be a common thing, so let's not use it everywhere. And the third thing is going to be the password, which is going to be common, so let's not use that also everywhere. Perfect. So now what do we do here? So since this is variable, we don't have to put it in inverted commas. We can just write URL, but we are trying to hit the interface. So we can concatenate this string with another string using plus sign, and again then use single inverted commas and concatenate it with the rest of the variable that we want to insert, and in this case is slash interface. And in basic auth we'll remove this and we'll put username, and we'll remove the password from here and we'll enter the password variable here, and let's run the script and see what happens now. So great, everything is still running, everything is still awesome. So great, we are reaching somewhere, but we do not want to print this. So now we know that the response that we are getting is in JSON format. But there's another thing to note here. In Python, anything between the square brackets is known as a list, and anything between these curly brackets is known as a dictionary. So dictionary has a key and a value associated with that key. So like rx packet here is the key, and the value for that rx packet key is 3090215. And what we really want to do here is we want to search all the keys which have say type as bridge or which have type say Ethernet. So let's get into this list and dictionaries. How can we fetch these values? So to fetch these values, to iterate through a list, what we need to use is a for loop. So for loop is just a loop that will go on until a condition is met, and once the condition fails, it comes out of that loop. So what we basically want to do is we want to iterate through this loop, and what we want to fetch is the interface name. So for interface, in a response.json, what we want to do is print the interface. So let's do one more thing. Let's use the print command here, and in double inverted commas, this is an interface, and let's print one more thing here. After the interface is done, we just print a bunch of dashes. So do note here that in for loop there is a gap left in front, which is 4 spaces. And in Python, this is probably the only syntax that you have to remember: indentation. You need to indent after loops, after defining a function, after defining a class, and after if then else statements. Beyond this, you do not need any special syntaxes. So let's see what happens this time around when we print. Great. So this is an interface, and the first interface gets printed, and then there is a bunch of dashes. Then this is an interface, bunch of interface gets printed, and then there is dashes. So now we know that interface basically contains each of that list elements separately. So now what we need to do is from that interface we need to fetch a key which is type, right? So let's print this interface with the key type, and let's see what happens this time around. So this time around what we got back was just these 4 things, that is ether, bridge, VLAN. That is, a router has 4 interfaces, one is Ethernet, 2 are bridges, and 1 is a VLAN. Awesome. So what we now want to do is we want to print, if the interface is a bridge, we want to print its ID and we want to print its name. So let's put an if statement here. So if interface, the name, what we are searching for as type, is equal to a bridge, then what we want to do is print the interface dot id. Sorry, we need to use the square brackets here, and we need to put inverted commas also. Okay, so id, and what we need to print is the interface name. Great. So let's see what happens this time around. Okay, so we got two bridge interfaces and both of them got printed, but we cannot decipher between the ID and the interface. So no worries, let's do one more thing. Let's concatenate this one more, and let's make this more readable. So let's say that the ID of the bridge interface is this ID. Let's concatenate this with a plus sign, and then after that let's leave a gap, and then let's say the name of the interface is this. Again, let's indent the name. Perfect. Now let's see what happens. Perfect. So now we have the ID and the bridge name printed on our screens. Perfect. So what we are doing right now is the URL is fixed, the username is fixed, and the password is fixed. So let's do one thing. This time around, so let's get the IP address, the username, and the password from the user, and let's fetch the data then. So to do this, what we need to do is let's create a variable IP address, and let's say it's equal to input. So with input, what we're going to get is a prompt, and let's inform the user what we want them to enter. So please enter the IP of the router from which you want the list of bridge interfaces. Perfect. Then we're gonna prompt them for username. So let's say input, and let's say please enter the username of this router. Great. And in the last, we're going to use the password. So input, please enter the password of this router. Great. So now let's do one thing. Let's bring all of this one code here, and let's cut it here and paste it here. And what we're going to do is the URL now becomes minus the IP address. So URL now becomes this will become concatenated with IP address, and the username we already have, and the password we already have. So we don't need this anymore. We have a URL, we have a response, and we have an instance. So let's run this and see what happens this time around. So here let's enter our IP address, let's enter our username and the password, and let's see what happens. Awesome, we got the IDs of our bridge interfaces and the names. So now we have made a small script with which we can get the IDs and the names of all the bridge interfaces in any of our routers. All we need to do is enter an IP address, enter the username and the password, and fetch the data. So we don't have to log into each and every router now. We can do it just by the script. So this is pretty cool, right? So this is the way that you can build your own scripts, and these scripts can do a specific task. This is just the beginning of it, so don't worry if you are wondering how am I going to do it. It is simple. You can come back to me. You can send me a message in the comment section below and ask me anything. If you want a specific script to be built, we can all build it together. We can use our GitHub. I'm posting a small script that I've made on the GitHub. The link is below. You can just review it once. If you don't understand anything, please do come back to me. Do let me know in the comment section below what do you think about today's video, and do let me know if you would like such videos where we do live scripting and we do specific scripting that you would want to understand and want to build together with me. Please do press the like button if you like today's video, and please do subscribe to my channel to get the latest updates. Until we see the next time, goodbye.